Why is Disney in full panic mode over the new Star Wars trilogy? Critical Drinker has just exposed something shocking about the director of Rey Star Wars Trilogy, and it's not pretty. With Disney cranking out project after project and still failing to meet expectations, will this new trilogy be another nail in the coffin for Star Wars? Stick around to find out what's really going on behind the scenes and why fans are losing all hope for the future of this once great franchise. Disney has recently announced a new Star Wars trilogy. While a small group of diehard Disney Star Wars fans are celebrating the news, the majority of the fan base is feeling indifferent or outright skeptical. Personally, I fall into the latter category. Every time Disney announces a new Star Wars project, I'm hesitant to get my hopes up, knowing full well that they've rarely delivered. This is a sentiment shared by many, but Disney seems to ignore or dismiss how the majority of fans feel. Fortunately, there's Critical Drinker, a voice of reason who's not afraid to speak out about Disney's mishandling of Star Wars. With millions of views on his videos, he's been highlighting the errors Disney continues to make, and now he's doing it again with this new trilogy. While Disney may despise his criticism, it's clear that fans are backing him. Let's dive into what Critical Drinker and others have pointed out, especially since this new trilogy could be just another hit to the already fractured Star Wars legacy.
You know, they say a politician is someone who can talk for hours without actually saying anything, and for some reason, that maxim's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Disney Star Wars these days. Honestly, these guys have announced so many new movies and TV shows over the years that the reveal of a new Star Wars project at this point carries about as much weight as an apology from Boogie. In fact, let's take a quick look at all the projects that they're apparently working on right now. Anyway, to this not-so-illustrious list, you can also add the most recent announcement of a brand new trilogy of episodes 10, 11 and 12 being overseen by Simon Kinberg. You remember him, don't you? He's the guy who brought us all-time classics like X-Men Dark Phoenix, Fant Four Stick, The New Mutants, and the 355.
Oh man! Oh god! Oh man!
Okay, I know I'm being a bit of a dick here, and in the interests of fairness, he also produced movies like The Martian, Days of Future Past, Logan, and the Deadpool trilogy, and he worked on Star Wars Rebels, so in theory, it's not like he's a terrible choice for this role or anything. In fact, he's actually a pretty experienced producer who's had more hits than misses in his career, and under normal circumstances, he'd be just the kind of guy you'd want to oversee something like this. Circumstances, however, are not normal at Lucasfilm. Reports seem to vary on what this trilogy's actually going to consist of, whether it's a continuation of the Skywalker saga, which will be pretty fucking impressive considering all the Skywalkers are dead now, or the first 3 movies in a brand new saga that's going to start a whole new storyline. Will it tie in with the Rey Solo movie that's apparently also in development, or has that project morphed into an entire trilogy that Kinberg's going to oversee?
Son of a bitch!
The answer to all of these questions, of course, is who the fuck even cares? This is just another in a long line of pointless announcements for ghost projects that will likely never see the light of day. If it follows the usual trend of Disney Star Wars productions, it'll trundle on for a couple of years with no major announcements and no obvious signs of progress before Kinberg moves on to a more viable project and the whole thing gets quietly cancelled. Because here's the harsh reality of the situation, boys and girls. The problem isn't Simon Kinberg, the problem isn't the Star Wars brand, although you've done everything in your power to ruin that, and the problem isn't the Star Wars fan base. The problem is you, Disney. It doesn't matter how many things you announce or promise, nobody wants more Star Wars stuff from you, because after 10 years of creative and financial disasters, you've well and truly proven that you just can't do it. Star Wars is simply not compatible with whatever your brand stands for these days, and no matter how hard you try to reshape it, you can't force people to accept it. You bent Star Wars so much that it finally broke, and there's no fixing it now. If you had any common sense whatsoever, you would let it go and allow someone else who actually cares about it to take over. I mean, I know you won't actually do that, you'll hold on to this thing until you've run it into the ground, salted the earth, and then nuked the entire site from orbit. But a man can dream. So sure, you just keep announcing new projects and watch while people totally don't care. This is the world that you've created for yourselves. I hope you're happy with it.
Speaking of hits, can we talk about how Disney seems overwhelmed with the sheer number of projects they're juggling? Every one of these projects is reportedly in development simultaneously, putting leadership at Lucasfilm in an impossible position. Imagine you're Kathleen Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilm. On top of your corporate duties, you need to manage the creative direction of dozens of productions. No one can give their undivided attention to so many projects at once, which is why Disney has struggled to maintain consistency. Kathleen Kennedy's management of Lucasfilm has led to disappointing results. With so many projects on her plate, it's almost inevitable that quality suffers. This isn't about feeling sorry for her workload, it's about accountability. She chose this route, prioritizing quantity over quality. This decision reflects poorly on the franchise and is a prime example of poor leadership. Instead of ensuring that Star Wars projects are carefully crafted, Kennedy has opted to churn out content to capitalize on the brand. Unfortunately, this has only led to the current state of Star Wars, which can be traced directly back to her leadership. As Critical Drinker has pointed out, Kennedy continues to pile more projects onto her plate, each one promising nothing more than mediocrity. Lucasfilm could have made worse choices when it comes to directors like Simon Kinberg. However, Kinberg has some experience with Star Wars, having worked on Star Wars Rebels, a series with its ups and downs. Early on, Rebels was seen by many as a weak imitation of the Clone Wars, with inferior animation, storytelling, character development, and action. The show's tone was also more childish, which didn't help it earn credibility with longtime fans. One of the more absurd moments in Rebels was when the Inquisitors used spinning lightsabers Ubers that allowed them to fly, a ridiculous concept that contributed to the show's reputation as a far cry from what fans expected from Star Wars. Despite these issues, Rebels did improve with each season, especially after Season 1. Kinberg's most notable moment on Rebels was the return of Ahsoka Tano, much older, and her emotional confrontation with Darth Vader. This was a standout moment in the show, and for many fans, it was a huge highlight. Unlike the recent live-action Ahsoka series, Rebels treated the character with much more care and respect. While Star Wars Rebels didn't quite reach the heights fans hoped for, it did improve with each season. Kinberg, the director, has experience in the world of big franchises, including working on superhero films like Logan. Logan was one of the best comic book films ever made, so Kinberg has proven his ability to handle major franchises. However, that doesn't necessarily mean his involvement will fix the broader issues at Lucasfilm. The real problem lies with the leadership. Despite Kinberg's potential as a director, Kathleen Kennedy's management continues to be the major hurdle. As long as she's at the helm, it's hard to see how new Star Wars projects can succeed. Lucasfilm's leadership seems more focused on financial gain and political agendas than on producing high-quality content. Until there's a change at the top, it's hard to get excited about any new Star Wars announcements. The recent announcements about a new trilogy have been met with frustration and indifference from fans. It's not just about the uncertainty surrounding the content of these films, it's that no one even cares what they're about anymore. As Critical Drinker aptly points out, who even cares about these movies? This is a sad reality for anyone who grew up with Star Wars as a cultural touchstone. At one point, Star Wars was a cultural phenomenon. New movies would generate massive excitement, anticipation, but now it's just another announcement in a long line of disappointing, poorly executed projects. Disney has managed to ruin the Star Wars franchise in just a short time. In the span of a decade, they've taken one of the most iconic pop culture franchises and turned it into something no one cares about anymore. The franchise's rapid decline is astonishing. Once upon a time, any Star Wars announcement would send fans into a frenzy, but now the mere mention of new projects barely causes a stir. Fans have become disillusioned, and even the excitement surrounding the initial Star Wars sequels has faded into apathy. The most recent batch of announcements has been disappointing, with most of them never even seeing the light of day. People are no longer taking Disney seriously, and the excitement that once surrounded Star Wars has been replaced with indifference. It's the same kind of lackluster enthusiasm that many had when the Rings of Power Season 2 came out. Some may have kept watching, but the magic was already gone. And that's how many feel about Star Wars now. The magic is gone. Even if this new trilogy makes it to the big screen, it's hard to see how it will recoup the enormous investment required to make these films. Disney Star Wars ventures haven't been able to do that for a while, and it's hard to imagine how this new trilogy will be any different. As Critical Drinker puts it, the problem with Disney's handling of Star Wars isn't something they're likely to realize. The issue began the moment George Lucas sold the franchise to Disney. Fans used to criticize Lucas for letting Star Wars stagnate, but in reality, the franchise started to die the moment it left his hands. Every new Disney project has only contributed to its slow, painful decline. Star Wars is now little more than a shadow of its former self, a once great franchise that has lost the attention and excitement of the very fans who made it a cultural icon. At this point, I don't think anything Disney does could get me invested in Star Wars again. The only way I could see the franchise turning around is if Disney sold it to another company that understands what made Star Wars special in the first place. But under Disney's current leadership, there's no hope for a revival. The franchise will continue to decline until there are no fans left, and honestly, I've reached a point where I just don't care anymore. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the current state of Star Wars? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. Your support means a lot.